It didn't begin with a bang. No missiles, no tanks, no grand declarations. It began with something far quieter, an invoice in a different currency. A shipment of oil settled outside the dollar, a central bank hoarding gold instead of US treasuries. Bit by bit, the global financial order is shifting, and a question once unthinkable is now impossible to ignore. Are we witnessing the slow decline of dollar dominance? Welcome to Shadows of Strategy. For nearly 8 decades, the US dollar has been more than money. It has been the backbone of global trade, the anchor of reserves, the language of finance. Every barrel of oil, every major trade deal, every debt contract seemed to orbit the dollar. Nations held it because others demanded it. Investors trusted it because it never failed them. And Washington used it not only as an economic tool, but as a weapon of power, one that shaped the international system. But the world is changing. Great power rivalry is returning. Sanctions on Russia, severing banks from SWIFT, freezing central bank reserves. Even weaponizing export controls sent a chilling message to other capitals. If it could happen to Moscow, what stops it from happening to anyone else? Nations that once accepted dollar hegemony as a fact of life are now building escape routes, backup plans, and parallel systems. China has been the most ambitious. Its cross-border interbank payment system, or CIPS, provides an alternative path to SWIFT. More of its energy imports are being invoiced in yuan. Swap lines with Belt and Road countries help spread its financial footprint. Beijing isn't trying to replace the dollar overnight. It's weaving a parallel web, one thread at a time. Russia's trajectory is more desperate, but no less revealing. Cut out of the Western financial arteries, Moscow has shifted trade to yuan, rupees, and rubles. Its reserves are increasingly held in gold or in friendly jurisdictions. In a way, Russia is showing others how to survive without dollars, turning itself into a living experiment of de-dollarization. Then there's the Middle East. For decades, the petrodollar system tied oil sales to US currency, guaranteeing steady demand. Today, some Gulf producers are quietly testing deals in yuan, or euros, or local currencies. The volumes remain small, but symbolically, they break a sacred taboo: the idea that energy must equal dollars. Each non-dollar cargo builds confidence that the world can live without one universal unit. At the same time, central banks everywhere are diversifying. Gold reserves are climbing to levels not seen in decades. Bilateral currency swaps allow nations to settle directly without passing through New York. New digital payment systems, reduced dependency on traditional correspondent banks. These changes don't collapse the dollar overnight, but they chip away at its aura of inevitability. So where does Washington stand under President Donald Trump? The US has doubled down on using economic leverage as a strategic weapon. Tariffs to pressure rivals, sanctions to coerce behavior, and financial choke points to guard technology. For America, the dollar system remains a fortress. But for others, it looks increasingly like a cage. And the more Washington flexes, the more incentive rivals have to design alternatives. Europe's position is uneasy. The euro is strong, but fragmented. EU leaders talk of strategic autonomy, but deep reliance on US markets and dollar liquidity ties their hands. Still, the political will to reduce exposure is growing. Quietly, Europe is investing in payment systems and exploring digital tools to protect itself in case the financial winds shift further. But let's be clear, the dollar is not disappearing. Its dominance rests on deep foundations. US financial markets are unrivaled in size and liquidity. The rule of law, despite its flaws, still offers more predictability than most alternatives. And in every global crisis, whether pandemic, war, or economic shock, capital rushes into US treasuries, not out of them. Safe haven status is hard to replicate, and no rival currency yet matches it. What is ending, however, is unipolarity. The dollar is still king, but others are learning to survive without always bowing to it. Call it the rise of financial multipolarity. multiple systems, overlapping networks, new ways to move money beyond Washington's reach. That's what makes this a financial Cold War. It's not about overthrowing the dollar in one stroke. It's about undermining its monopoly until its grip is weaker. Consider technology. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, are no longer theory. China has rolled out its digital yuan to millions. If these platforms link up across borders, trade settlement could bypass traditional clearing altogether. That doesn't dethrone the dollar immediately, but it lowers the switching costs. And once switching costs fall, alternatives spread faster. The risk for America is not sudden collapse, it's slow erosion. Mounting debt, political gridlock, repeated debt ceiling crises, each weakens confidence at the edges. And it's at the edges where alternatives are gathering strength. If Washington cannot manage its own house, the world will quietly hedge its bets. Yet paradoxically, the very turbulence of today might still anchor dollar dominance. Because in every storm, global investors still run for cover, and cover means dollars. Gold may glitter, yuan may rise, but when panic hits, liquidity and trust decide everything. For now, the dollar still has both. But make no mistake, the battlefield has shifted. The wars of tomorrow are not fought only with weapons, but with wires, contracts, and payment rails. The US, China, Russia, and others are not just competing for territory. They are competing for control over the very veins of global finance. The outcome won't be announced with treaties or surrenders. It will be felt in the choices nations make, what currency they invoice in, where they store reserves, and whose rules they obey when the pressure mounts. The question is no longer whether the dollar will face rivals. The question is whether America can adapt fast enough to stay ahead, or whether the new financial Cold War will chip away until dollar supremacy becomes just another chapter in history. And that battle is unfolding right now in every trade, every sanction, and every shift of reserves.